I was 8 years old when it started. Let's call that version of me Emma. We lived in a two-story house on Sycamore Lane. Nothing special, white siding, blue shutters, a garden out front that my mother tended obsessively. Roses, lavender, black-eyed Susans. My bedroom was on the second floor, window facing the street. I loved that room because directly outside, maybe 20 feet away, stood a street lamp. Old-fashioned, cast iron, the kind that glows warm orange at night. That light filled my room every evening, turning the walls amber and gold, safe, protected. I was terrified of the dark back then. Still am, if I'm being honest. That street lamp felt like a guardian. As long as I could see that orange glow, nothing bad could happen. I'd fallen in love with reading that summer. Percy Jackson, specifically. I'd stay up late with a flashlight under the covers, reading about demigods and monsters and quests. Looking back, maybe I should have paid more attention to those stories. Maybe I would have recognized what was outside my window. It was late August. School would start in 2 weeks. The nights were still warm, so I kept my window cracked open. Just an inch or two, enough for the breeze. That's when I first heard it.
The first night, I thought it was my cat, Luna. I was lying in bed, book propped against my knees, when I heard rustling, movement, something shifting in the bushes below. I glanced at my doorway. Luna was curled up in the hall, asleep. So what was making that sound? I should have called my parents, should have yelled down the hall, but I didn't. Instead, I did what curiosity always makes us do. I looked. Slowly, I sat up, rose onto my knees, pressed my face close to the window screen, and there he was. A man, crouched in the lavender bush directly below my window, surrounded by purple flowers and the warm orange glow of the street lamp. He wore a black hoodie, worn, faded, the kind of clothing that's been lived in for too long. Dark jeans, work boots. But what I noticed most were his hands. They were completely white, not pale, white. Like porcelain, like bone bleached by sun. They glowed in the lamplight, stark against the dark fabric of his sleeves. He wasn't facing the house. He was facing the street, crouched low, utterly still, as if he were waiting for something to pass by. I didn't understand. If someone was going to break into a house, they'd go to the backyard where it's dark, where nobody could see them, not the front yard, not directly under a lit window, not in full view of the street. It didn't make sense. I ducked back into bed, pulled the covers over my head, told myself it was a homeless person, someone looking for a place to sleep. I didn't tell my parents. I don't remember why.
The second night, he came back. Same position, same lavender bush, same white hands glowing in the lamplight, still facing away from the house, watching the street. By the third night, I was watching for him. Fourth night, fifth night, sixth night, every single night he returned, always after dark, always in the same spot, never moving, except for slight shifts of weight, like he was settling in for a long wait. I started to rationalize it. Maybe he worked night shifts and this was his route home. Maybe he was watching someone's house across the street. Maybe he was just harmless. But something about the way he crouched there, perfectly still, inhumanly patient, made my skin crawl. I counted the nights. 8, 9, 10. On the 11th night, I considered telling my parents. But what would I say? There's a man who sits in our garden every night, but he doesn't do anything? They check the bushes, find nothing, tell me I was imagining things. So I kept it to myself. My secret watcher. 12 nights. And then came the 13th. I don't know what was different about that night. The air felt heavier. The orange glow from the street lamp seemed dimmer somehow. I was in bed, book abandoned, watching the window, waiting. And he appeared, same as always, crouching, still, facing the street. But then something changed. He froze. He'd been still before, but this was different. Complete cessation of movement, like someone had hit pause on a video, like he'd turned to stone. And then, slowly, so slowly it felt like the air itself was resisting, he began to stand. He rose and rose and rose. My bedroom window was at least 15 feet off the ground, high enough that I'd never worried about anyone reaching it. But as he stood, his head kept climbing. Higher, higher, until the top of his hood was nearly level with my windowsill. His proportions were all wrong. His torso looked normal, human-sized, human-shaped, but his legs were impossibly long. 12 feet? 15? Like he was standing on stilts, except I could see his knees bending naturally beneath the fabric of his jeans. He shouldn't exist. Couldn't exist. But there he was. And then, with that same agonizing slowness, he turned his head toward me. There was nothing under his hood. Not a face with no features, not skin, not even darkness exactly. It was absence. Shadow so complete that it seemed to consume light. The orange glow from my room should have illuminated his face. Instead, it just stopped, disappeared into that void. I could see faintly through the darkness, could make out the back of his hood on the other side, as if his head was hollow, as if there was nothing at all between the fabric. But I could feel his eyes. Even though I couldn't see them, I felt them, locked onto mine with impossible precision. And something happened that I've never been able to fully describe. It felt like he crawled inside me. Not physically, not even psychologically exactly, but something about his gaze, his presence, poured into me like cold water, like liquid shadow filling up every empty space in my body. My skin felt wrong, too tight, too foreign, like I was wearing someone else's body and couldn't remember how to move it correctly. Every cell screamed, "Wrong! Wrong! Wrong!" Then he raised his hand, that bone-white, fingerless hand. No nails, no lines, just smooth white surface. And he pressed one finger to where his lips should be. Shh. The universal gesture for silence, for secrets, for things we don't speak about. I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream, couldn't move. We stared at each other. If you can call it staring when one of you doesn't have eyes. And then he turned around and vanished. Not walked away, not faded, just ceased to exist. One moment he was there, the next, the lavender bush was empty, like he never existed at all.
I told myself it was a dream. I had to tell myself it was a dream, because the alternative, that what I'd seen was real, was impossible, unacceptable, something my 8-year-old mind couldn't process. So I buried it, convinced myself it was a recurring nightmare, or maybe something from a book I'd read. My imagination had always been overactive. Everyone said so. Maybe I'd even written a story about it and forgotten, mixing fiction with memory until I couldn't tell them apart. The years passed. We moved when I was 13. New house, new city, new school. My bedroom in the new place had blackout curtains, no street lamp outside. I told my parents it helped me sleep better. High school, college, adulthood. The memory became fuzzy, unreal, a ghost of a ghost. Until 1 month ago. I'm 20 years old now, living in a small city in the Southwest, 3rd-floor apartment. Cheap but clean, good light during the day. I'm studying mathematics at the local university. Numbers make sense. They have rules, logic, certainty. Everything that night wasn't. It was late, past midnight. I'd been working on a problem set, and the desert night had gotten cold the way it does, dropping 30 degrees once the sun sets. I stood up to close my window. Just a routine movement. Done it 1,000 times. I grabbed the frame, started to pull it down. And there he was, standing in the bushes below, 3 stories down, staring up at me. The same black hoodie, the same impossible proportions, the same void where his face should be. But he was exactly as tall as he'd been 11 years ago, which meant his head didn't reach my 3rd-story window. He stood there, neck craned upward at an uncomfortable angle, that empty hood tilted toward me. And I felt it again. That wrongness, that invasion, like shadow and cold water and impossible geometry, all being poured directly into my nervous system. My hands locked on the window frame. I couldn't move, couldn't close it, couldn't step back. We stared at each other across 3 stories and 11 years. And slowly, so slowly, he raised his hand, that smooth, white, fingerless hand, and pressed it to where his mouth should be. Shh. Don't tell. Don't speak. Keep the secret. Then, just like before, he was gone. Vanished. The bushes swayed slightly in the breeze, as if nothing had ever been there.
I stood at that window for hours, shaking, crying, trying to convince myself it was a hallucination. Stress, too much caffeine, sleep deprivation. But I knew what I'd seen. The next morning, I went outside, still in my pajamas. Didn't care who saw me. I walked around to the side of the building, to the bushes below my window. The landscaping there was overgrown, desert shrubs, sagebrush mostly, with some ornamental grasses the landlord had planted years ago and stopped maintaining. I pushed through them, searching, and I found them. 2 columns. 2 perfect vertical spaces where the branches were broken, snapped clean, the leaves crushed flat. Each column about 6 inches wide, maybe 7, spaced exactly the width of a person's stance apart, where he'd stood. The evidence was undeniable. Someone had been there, had stood there, for however long, watching me. I took photos, dozens of them from every angle, sent them to my best friend with a rambling explanation. She called immediately, worried, asking if I was okay. I lied and said yes.
Here's what keeps me awake now. It's been 11 years between visits. 11 years, which means the next time he appears, I'll be 31, maybe 32. What is he waiting for? What is he watching me for? Why 13 nights when I was 8? Why 1 night when I was 20? Is there a pattern I'm not seeing? A timeline I don't understand? And that gesture, that finger to where lips should be, what does it mean? Is it a warning? A request? A threat? Don't tell anyone? Keep the secret? Or else, what? I've researched everything I can find. Folklore, urban legends, paranormal encounters. Nothing matches exactly. Tall figures with no faces? Sure. Shadow people? Plenty of those. But none that crouch in gardens for 13 nights. None that disappear for over a decade, only to return unchanged. None that feel like they're inside you when they look at you. I've considered moving, changing cities entirely, but would it matter? He found me here, 3 stories up, different state, different house. If he wants to find me again in 11 years, he will. The worst part isn't the fear, it's the waiting. Knowing he'll come back, knowing I can't stop it, can't explain it, can't understand it, and knowing that whatever he wants from me, whatever reason he has for watching, I won't know until he's ready to tell me, if he ever does. Last night, I had a thought that I can't shake. What if the waiting is the point? What if the horror isn't what he'll do when he comes back, but the years of dread in between? What if I'm not supposed to figure it out? What if I'm just supposed to live with it? To know that every 11 years, no matter where I am, no matter how safe I feel, he'll be there, watching, waiting, silent.
If you've seen something like this, a figure that returns on a schedule, something that watches without explanation, leave a comment. Please,
I need to know I'm not the only one. If you've experienced unexplained visits, patterns that don't make sense, or entities that seem to be waiting for something, your story matters. Share it. Subscribe for more real horror experiences, real encounters with things that shouldn't exist. Hit the notification bell, because if something happens, if he comes back early, I'll document it here. And if 11 years from now I suddenly stop posting, you'll know why. Thank you for listening, and whatever you do, pay attention to your windows at night.